Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast. Today we're going to talk about how to write better stories faster, and that's some pretty cool stuff. There you go. So,
Look at that! Mr. Chuckles over here. Just to catch everybody up, I'll even use this for my something cool. So Dave says, we're making plans. We're making plans for we actually just booked our venue for our Smarter Artist Summit next year, which is very, very exciting. So we're talking about that, and then it's at the end of April, or very, very end of March. And then Johnny said to confirm, so how does that compete with the London Book Fair? Because Johnny and I are planning on going to that. And he said, that's mid-April, right? And I said, yeah, I think so. And then Dave says, you two are going to the London Book Fair? And Johnny says, yes. And Dave says, you fuckers. Which, we said, you can go. I don't want to go. So
I didn't say I don't want to go.
Okay. Oh,
then you should go.
I don't know.
Okay, you can't drive there though. Good luck.
He's gonna go on a barge.
Hold on 1 second.
I love that we're fuckers because he doesn't want to go or he can't go.
I'm looking at the dates.
Oh wow, this would be a coup if we can get Dave to go to London.
Because Dave, just to be clear, we would love for you to go.
And dude, London. Just so you know, just so we're clear on our geography here, that's the home of all those people whose accents you like.
I'm well aware of that. I've always wanted to go there. That's why I'm like...
It's April 12th through 14th.
There you go.
That timing is not good.
Because that's the reason you're not going to
that's the reason. So the timing was good, you'd go?
My son's birthday. Hello.
But if you just
take your son. I'm
air?
taking my family. My family's going to London.
No.
No, he can. We can all play
Here's
together.
the thing. I've always wanted to go there, but I hate flying, and the idea of being on a plane that long scares the hell out of me.
Over the big deep ocean.
You should take some ayahuasca before that trip.
Well, here's the thing. See, it's going to London or the UK in general is like one of those things I've always wanted to do. It's like one of those things like, yeah, I'll do it. But, as long as I don't have a legitimate reason to go, I can't like feel like, oh, I really missed out because like, okay, I just, I didn't get around to it. But now you guys have a legitimate reason for me to go, and I can't.
Is that what makes us fuckers?
Yes.
Just to be
You're
clear.
living one of my dreams. Johnny's stealing my dreams one by one.
Oh, well, I am having dinner with Clive Barker and Stephen King and
bastard!
tomorrow. Not really.
I hate you.
So I have a few sort of announcements sort of things, but can I go ahead and do my something cool? Can I scoop anybody?
Oh yeah,
might be
please
thinking
do.
that's not something cool. Okay, so here's my something cool. And it's a self-serving something cool. I'm sorry, guys. Like this won't apply to the rest of you, although it kind of will. It kind of will. We're all in this together. But Self-Publishing Podcast is new and noteworthy on iTunes. So we did the 2.0, and actually, as I'm looking at it right now, this may or may not be the case literally, depending on when you hear this. If you hear it on the audio feed, it may be slightly different. But podcasts, like homepage iTunes podcasts, we're the third one. Like it's right there, boom. And so that's fantastic. And so that means a lot for the show, and it means a lot for the community too, because honestly, the more exposure we have, the cooler things we are free to do, and then of course share it with all of you. So thank you everybody for being part of this relaunch. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this because I really, I don't know, we were really intent on making this show better, and that was one of our goals this year, and I feel like we've done that. I love our little 50 minutes of bullshit before we get to the point, but we get to the point faster, and I think we made a tighter show. And I know Dave's still scoffing over there. I think he's boiling in hatred because we're going to London.
No, I'm reading a comment. Guilo Dragon says, Dave, come to the UK. We're all miserable here, and we keep to ourselves. You'd love it.
Dude, those are your people. Like,
oh, I know that. I know that very well. Thank you.
Can we schedule you like a big boat? Like maybe there's this ship that's leaving at the end of March.
You know what
I'm imagining a Truman-style production where we have movie screens that go alongside him, and we just convince him he's driving there.
You know what I hate worse than the idea of being on a plane? going to London, being on a boat going to London.
You take a boat? I mean, you take a plane over
No.
a boat?
Yes, I hate boats. I hate the idea of them.
Wow, I would have never guessed.
So an aircraft carrier is like your worst nightmare.
Yeah.
So how are you ever? So you're never planning on actually traveling overseas?
I'm waiting for some teleportation device to be perfected.
Like you won't be paranoid about that.
Yeah, you'll be like, I bet you my molecules won't all show up over there. Wow.
Yeah.
So I would just like to ask if anybody like we did put a lot of effort and time and money into making this show better, and it'd be like now is a good time if you listen to the show and you enjoy it. We'd love a review on iTunes.
Value out of our show.
If you get value out of our show, please leave a review. That does make a big difference, guys. One of the other things too is a lot of people reviewed it when it was brand new, and that's great because we had a lot of support early on. Our fans are the best, but you know some of the shortcomings of the show were more apparent early on, and so we do have some
rambling
reviews
introductions.
Right. I mean, the rambling introductions, like those are still valid, but some of the things like the things that we tried to fix in 2.0, I think, are less valid now. And if you go in there and you're leaving a review and you see things in the old reviews that you like and that you think are valid, please vote them helpful. If you see something that maybe isn't as valid anymore, it'd be awesome if you'd say it wasn't as helpful because we have really tried to change this. We've tried to listen
to improve
to you guys, and we're doing Ask Us Anythings now, and so we're really trying to respond to your requests and thank everybody for being here with us.
Yeah, and I'd also add too that reviews are obviously wonderful; they're the best. But even if you don't have time for a review, if you have iTunes, it literally takes 3 seconds to give us a rating. Like you can just click the stars. All 5 are best.
and while reviews are good, you know what's even better? Pocket envelopes full of cash.
I thought you were going to say cookies. I thought you were going for cookies.
Too. If you want to send me cookies.
Yeah, like you to get cookies sent to you by somebody.
That's true.
I would just add on the topic of podcasts and stuff. This won't be true. Well, it is true, but it will be more true for people who listen on the feed than to people who listen live. But we now have, and this is true live, we now have an official network page on iTunes. It's the same thing as like the BBC and CNN and the big guys.
We're just like BBC.
We're just like the BBC.
That's going to be Sterling
being in London.
Tagline, actually, just like the BBC.
Just like the BBC. So we have that on iTunes, and you can find it. And this is, please do go here. It's sterlingandstone.net/FM, because Sterling and Stone FM is our site, like FM on the radio dial. And we don't currently have this, but we will very, very shortly as far as the live people are concerned. So first week of September, say, we will have all the shows that will launch in our network launch, which will be occurring at the end of September, will be up early. We'll have we'll have the art and the description and an episode 0 that's just like a 2 to 5 minute file that just we tell you what the show's going to be about, and so you'll get to see what we have there, and you can subscribe to them early and all that stuff. So we have the relaunched SPP is already live. We'll be relaunching our shameful Better Off Undead is worst show ever. We're going to have an Ask Us Anything podcast. We're going to have the daily Smarter Artist podcast that will be Monday through Friday every single day. And we're going to have The Walking Dave, we believe, is making a return. We think that's coming back. 8 questions, which is like
with some new podcast art that Dave thinks is okay.
Is okay. We'll be doing 8 questions. We'll ask all sorts of like creative types about their process, what kind of pencil they use, that sort of thing. And what else? Backstory is we're doing like backstory is like DVD extras. Like if you enjoyed Beam season 3, we'll record an episode of backstory about that. It'll be spoiler rich, that sort of thing. Any missing? Am I forgetting any?
The Authorpreneur's Almanac is making its comeback. I know it's been a long wait for people who were into that, but it will be consistent. It will be a consistent format week to week, and that'll drop every Monday.
So there you go. So that's going to be the Sterling and Stone Network, podcast network, and that's just the start. Like we'll eventually start featuring other people who want to make podcasts that are in our niche, and but that's down the road. We'll let you know. So sterlingandstone.net/FM. Check it out. Subscribe early. Again, you live people have to wait about a week, but we're getting there. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I do have something cool. It's brief, but I do want to mention. I know I already mentioned this, but it's awesome. We do have a venue for the Smarter Artist, and
the Smarter Artist Summit.
The Smarter Artist Summit, which we'll talk more about
will
that.
Will not conflict with April because Dave's going overseas then.
No, we got a couple weeks ahead of time there. That is very exciting, and it was fun. I went with Cindy. It was work, but it was a date too, and we went to we first checked out one place, and I was just sad. I left it because the place was a dump. It wasn't a dump, but it was just not what we wanted for our guests at all. We wanted something that felt special, and from the moment I stepped in there, I'm like, well, this is a nice warehouse space, but it didn't feel special. And what was appealing about it is it was 20% of the price of the next place on my list.
I wonder why.
But the from the moment I stepped through the doors, I'm like, I don't care how much this place costs. This is it. This is what we're doing. This is This is awesome. And it's this very big. It's like a community workspace. So like if you don't have an office, but maybe you're a graphic designer and you need a place to just go and set up your Mac and work with a bunch of other
to
great
get away
people.
from your kids.
Yeah, to get away from your kids, shared office space. It's like joining a gym, but it's a creative workspace. It's $200 a month if you want community area, but they have offices too that are 400 or more. And it's really neat. Everybody in there. Dave probably would have. There was a little bit of a hipster vibe in there, so Dave probably wouldn't have been too into it. But it was really neat. Beautiful, beautiful space, and then they have a whole private area that can house us in a big backyard. And it was really close to Gordo's Donuts, which
I got very excited at that.
Johnny did get very excited. Those are custom made. Like you stand in line to get your donut, and they make it just for you. Like it's not like you pick out your donuts from behind glass. They custom make your donut.
Donuts with a capital D, right? Yeah. Like the Fat Elvis is like smeared with peanut butter and bananas, and it's the size of a dinner plate.
Dinner plate size donuts.
When I used to work at a gas station, when I worked the day shift for a while, there were these lawn guys that came in all the time. And one of them, Spanish guy, used to call me Gordo. So yeah, I don't think I'll be going to Gordo's Donuts.
Oh, it's so good. I think you will.
I was very excited. We made a pilgrimage when my family was down there, and maybe doing it again when we come back in a couple of months.
I have a nice picture of a Gordo's Donuts. I think we should put it on the sales page for the summit when we announce it.
Ooh, I think we should too.
That's a perk. So my actual something cool is the show. This is old. I mean, this is from 1999. But I just watched the whole thing with my children, and I think it's worth a mention. Is the show Freaks and Geeks? Probably a lot of people listening have you've seen it before, but it's just such a good show, and it's one of those shows that it just didn't make it. It had 18 episodes ever. It didn't, it's one season and then it was gone. But man, I'm actually kind of glad that it went because it's just that one season is so classic, and a lot of those people went off to bigger and better things that they may not. They may not have done had it had not been for that show. But James Franco is in it, and Seth Rogen is in it, and Paul Feig is the guy who created it, and he did Spy and last year's Bridesmaids. It was executive produced by Judd Apatow. It's just really great pedigree, and the show itself is it's very well written. It's very well acted. It's great coming of age stuff. It's not like the Wonder Years, but it is a period piece. It came out in 1999, but it took place in 1980. And it's been really fun to watch it with my children. Great conversation pieces. There is drug use and sex and stuff that I want to have those conversations with them. So it makes me feel happy as a parent that I'm having these conversations. With that as kind of the backdrop. But for writers out there, it's just a very well-written show, great characters. It's good stuff. So if you haven't seen Freaks and Geeks before, it's on Netflix. You can stream it for free, and it's awesome.
Anything
My
for you,
cool
Dave?
thing, yeah,
Well,
my
going
cool thing.
overseas makes you happy?
Yeah, I finally got around to finishing watching the Daredevil series on Netflix.
Oh, how'd you like it?
I loved it. Did you all watch it?
Oh, I
I
watched it.
haven't
It's
seen it.
fantastic.
Oh my god, it's so good. And I
Yeah.
just love the way they did everything in the show. But I like the way they did Kingpin's character, although they never called him Kingpin. Just the background they get. There's a real emotional heft to his character that was just phenomenally done. Typically, we're moving into a new era for comic books in movies and TV. I think comics, especially Marvel, were always good at nuanced characters in sort of the tortured hero character. They were always really good at. That's why I always liked them. But a lot of times the TV shows and the movies just didn't deliver the same sort of respect, I think, for the audience. And this Netflix series, Daredevil, it's just so well done. It's even if you don't like comics, you'd love it.
Yeah, I agree. It's well produced. It's also one of those shows that it does have. I mean, Daredevil is a superhero, but it's not cheesy or unbelievable. He doesn't even get a red costume until very late in the show.
Last episode.
Yeah. Well, I was trying not to spoil that, but
It's a fucking costume.
but yeah, it's you believe it. The world feels very tangible, and you believe everybody's motivations, and it's a great show.
I was just talking to my kids the other day about the Batman, the Christian Bale Batman movies. I don't even know why, but I got to describe the original Batman TV show to them. So
Wham!
So
Pow!
that was good. So,
Bam!
Yeah, that's the opposite of what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. All right, so today's topic is going to be writing better stories faster. We're actually recording. It is appropriate to mention this now. I'll mention it at the beginning and at the end. So I'm not going to wait for an answer. I'm just going to steamroll on.
No, definitely. I think it's important to answer it. I mean, to talk about it now and at the end.
So we're doing a free podcast series. It's a self-contained podcast. So if you're like, oh, another podcast, holy shit. It's 9 episodes. They're about a half an hour each, and it's structured like a course. So it is a podcast, but it's not really like a podcast. But you can subscribe to it in the same places. So again, for you live viewers, you're the minority. We love you, but you are the minority. So you guys won't be able to do it yet because it's not there yet. But it will be there very soon, certainly by the time that this is live on the feed. And again, the link to our podcast page on iTunes is sterlingandstone.net/FM, and you'll be able to see it there. It's called Story Shop. And so if you want to subscribe to that and you can hear everything that we're going to be saying today about how to write better stories faster, you just get the whole thing. So I don't know. Are we releasing it all at once, or is it like released one a week?
No, it'll need to be more than one a week. But maybe 2 a week. Just to give some background here, we've talked about the Masterbeats app, and this is for the Story Shop app. And when we run our crowdfunding campaign to get the app going, we don't want to make the SPP all about that for several weeks. This is SPP 2.0. We're trying to learn from mistakes of the past, and when we did our Fiction Unboxed campaign, for several weeks, this turned into the Fiction Unboxed show, and a lot of listeners didn't like that, and we don't want to do that again. But so there's 2 things we wanted to do. First, we want to take that long conversation, because the Story Shop course, you can just listen to it, for what it is. They're like 25-minute episodes, and they're all about how we write better stories faster, and we structure that. But it's also going to be brought to you by Story Shop. It doesn't have a 99 Designs ad, so
And the letter S.
no awkward read, but at the very end of each episode, we're telling people about the Story Shop app, so that when our campaign goes live, we can email those people and let them know about it, which I thought was a really smart way to both move it away from SPP, kind of have this evergreen content out there, help generate a list, and do something that isn't just, instead of just talking about our campaign, it's actually providing a lot of value, while we drum up interest. So we talked about it as a company. We thought that this served a lot of masters, and we started recording it just today, right before this episode of SPP. So we're all hyped on the topic, and but anyway, that's the purpose of Story Shop, and so it's cool. It's a little sideways podcast, and as Johnny said, it's only 9 episodes, so it's not like anything you have to follow for a long time. But if you like the stuff we're talking about here, you'll love that little 9-episode series.
And we'll mention the Story Shop campaign a few times. We won't dominate the podcast with it. We'll mention it. If you want to keep abreast, I don't know, something with an A in it.
I think apprised.
Apprised, or you could stay abreast, I suppose. Unless you already are abreast, and then you won't have to worry about it. You can, by being on the mailing list, the Repeaters mailing list, which is sort of our master self-publishing podcast mailing list at sterlingandstone.net/repeaters. You actually get the Write Publish Repeat Conversations video series if you join there too. So anyway, so we'll leave that topic. We'll move on to writing better stories faster. So what's the best way to do this? You want to just sort of go through the high level of our...
Yeah, I think just use the original outline for like broad strokes.
So the idea is, how do you write better stories faster? And the short answer is plan better.
Practice.
Practice. There is that. The mechanics of actually writing faster are largely practice, but the practical on the ground, here's what you can improve for us, and we've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, comes down to improving the pre-process. That's the answer we would give you if somebody said, if you asked us how do I write faster, how to produce more stuff, which you need to do as an indie, would be to improve your pre-production process. So
yeah, I also
that's
think
sort of
that collaboration is a really big part of that. One of the reasons that the 3 of us collectively can go as fast as we do is because of our collaborative relationship. But I also think that even if you are a solo artist, as most writers are, most writers are working by themselves, there are a lot of the things that we do that you can do too. You can kind of take some of our collaborative strategies and use them just yourself, and you'll automatically get better results than you are kind of just battling that empty page alone, which it can just feel so defeating, and it can make you go really slow because it leads to a lot of second guessing and diminished excitement. And anyone who's listened to this podcast any length of time knows that we kind of thrive on like our fuel. We get that from just being excited about the projects that we're working on. And collaboration helps that because, well, unless Dave's one of your collaborators, then you get stuck in mud. But if you're excited,
that's some damn good mud, though.
It is damn good mud. But if you're excited about the project, then it's easy to get a velocity. And if you don't have a collaborator, then you probably want a group of friends or someone who will listen to you get excited about it. And if not, then find ways to excite yourself.
Oh, let's, on that note, find ways to excite yourself. You know what excites me a lot is a really good book cover.
Me too.
Well, I sometimes when I'm indulging this fetish, I don't know what to do.
Alone at night.
Yes. Well, so what would I do if I wanted something custom?
If you wanted,
you know what? I'm going to leave the masturbatory stuff behind. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to draw the line. It's 99 Designs. Just letting you guys know, I'm going to leave that. We'll stay with ayahuascas on this side. We'll just stop there. So go ahead, Dave. How would I get a good cover? Oh, I don't know, for professional purposes.
If you wanted a book cover, a great book cover, one that will inspire fantasies of whatever kind you have, you need go nowhere else but 99designs.com/SPP. They have teams of designers. They have, I think, what was it, 50 billion? Is that the number last?
I think you said zillions was the number that was in there.
They have more designers than there are people on Earth waiting to create the perfect cover for you. And we've done this spontaneous conversation about 99 Designs so many times that sometimes I forget the basics. The people that are coming to us for the first time might not know what exactly 99 Designs does. And here's the deal: you have a cover you want for your awesome book. You want it to be great. You want it to look good. You want it to compete with the others in all of the retail stores. You want to look professional, right? Yes, of course you do.
Yes.
So you go to 99 Designs and you pitch your idea. You might have some examples of other covers you like. You say what the story's about, and you have a contest. And this contest is for the designers to compete to give you the best cover. And you'll have a ton of entries. And this is where it gets really good because when we first started doing before these ads, we used 99 Designs. And the first time we did, we're like, oh man, what if we don't get a good book cover? But that was never an issue because every time we've ever gone and used them, they've had more great covers than we even knew what to do with. And it is a good problem to have. So basically you have this contest, you get a bunch of designers competing in an arena, and they deliver this cover to you, and you get to choose, and you could go to the second round of the contest, and you bring the best designs. You pick 2, 3, 4, I forget how many. I think it's up to 5 designers that you really like their stuff. You bring them to the next round, and then you really nail down exactly what kind of cover you want. And at this point, you can even have polls, or you can get people, your readers, interested in this, and that's some good advertising for your book. It's like a subtle sort of advertising for your book. You're getting people aware of it before it's even out, and then you pick the best cover, and then you have a great cover. And as we say all the time, you have absolutely nothing to lose, because if you don't like the covers, just walk away.
You walk away and you blow shit up behind you like an action movie.
Yes.
So start your custom design today at 99designs.com/SPP. Use the link, get the free power pack upgrade valued at $99 that gets you more designer time and attention, and indulge your fantasies. So there you go. All right, so moving into the story shop, the writing better stories faster. So there's a few elements here, and I think the thing that we really started with was the idea of the evolution of our process, and how we got faster as our process got better, if that makes any sense. Sean and Dave started before me. I hadn't even heard of Beats, and had really scaled it. Like you started with, do you want to talk about this a little bit? Like you started with.
Well, I started doing Beats
book, and it was chapter.
When I worked at a newspaper. A lot of times, I'd be writing a story, and either I didn't know all of the story I was writing, or I was waiting for quotes, because a story, when you're working in a newspaper, it's completely out of sequence. You're gathering information, then you're doing the story. But a lot of times, you want to get ahead, because there's deadlines and they come up on you quick. So you want to write as much of the story as you know immediately, and then fill in the pieces, because you're waiting for people to get back to you, and that could be a real pain in the ass. So I would write beats. Like if I was waiting to find out something, I'd write what I knew, and then I'd put, okay, waiting for councilman to get back to me, and I would just leave a space in the story. And sometimes, the councilman might say something that would completely change the rest of the story, and that's what it was. But beats is basically like, planning out what you're going to write, and Cliff's notes, as you said before. And then when you actually get to the story, it goes a lot quicker.
So these guys originally chapter by chapter, and then episode to episode, and I think
chapter by chapter is the ultimate.
Sean, go. What, Sean?
Oh, you're skipping out, or I'm skipping out. I'm gonna go out and in.
Oh, all right. He's gonna go in. He's gonna go out and in, everybody. What was I gonna say? So the first time I saw Beats was with Unicorn Western, and they were just like they were like this happens, this happens. it was somewhere between like. Am I still here? I paused the audio. YouTube got another bonus episode.
There's like a full 2 minutes, and I couldn't hear a word you're saying.
Yeah, I know.
You're like frozen.
I know. I realized that you were paused. My Chrome had locked up, and so, Sean, I actually have the audio pause. This is one where the YouTube people are getting bonus content. You guys are getting bonus.
Bonus!
So I paused this in the middle. I got to the point where I was talking about Unicorn Western Beats, and I paused it because I realized you guys were out. So I'm just going to continue if I.
Okay, cool.
Okay. And then beyond that, Sean started doing these more and more comprehensive beats packages, and we've really evolved to what if you were listening to the show a year ago, we started calling it Beats 2.0. The CI side is different. This was within Realm and Sands, and the stories we believe have gotten incrementally better and much faster to write and produce. It's all about systematization, and so we just sort of wanted to take you through, the finding the ideas and narrowing down the ideas and figuring out your plot and characters and all of that. So, you wanna who talks next? I've been talking too long.
Dave. Dave never talks.
I'm looking at comments.
Sean, why don't you talk about the plots, the ideas stuff, the narrowing down ideas? Because I think a lot of people either say one of two things. They either say, I have too many ideas and I don't know how to find the gem, or they say, I don't have any ideas. Where do you guys find ideas? Which, honestly, after a few years writing, is really I literally don't understand that sentiment anymore.
Yeah,
I used to understand it a little, and now I just don't get it.
With too many ideas, for sure. But we were just talking about this an hour ago, so it's very fresh in my head. I feel like writers make two big mistakes. Either they're afraid they're not going to have enough ideas, or they don't know what to do with all their ideas because they're all over the place and there are just too many of them. And I think those are two things you kind of just have to embrace. So as your ideas are coming, you have to kind of just let them flow, let them come, and not be worried that you're going to lose a really good idea. Because I think we've all been writing long enough to know that if you have a great idea, it's going to circle back. The best ideas, you don't just lose them. They come back. Available Darkness is the first thing that Dave and I did together. And, he wasn't even legally drinking. I mean, he's not legally drinking now either, but he wasn't even drinking. He wasn't of age.
Curious as to where this thread is going. Dave's wasn't legally drinking. What?
Well, no, because he was.
You're saying he started it a long time ago.
Yeah, he was a teenager.
Oh, that was. I got lost in that.
Back before my hopes and dreams were all.
Yes. The very first threads of that idea, were a long time ago. But they circled back and they eventually became a story. And I think that you have to be confident in your best ideas, that they will come back. And I know a lot of authors, a lot of writers, a lot of creative people, they'll scribble down every idea and they have notebooks that they'll never return to, but it makes them feel safe to get those ideas down. And so I think that that's important. To have a place where you can put your stories or you put your ideas so you feel safe that they're not being lost, but you also don't have to think of them as precious, because the good ideas will come back and that well is bottomless and you just want to keep recording them. So when you're first thinking of an idea, okay, well, here's my idea for a story, this is what I want to do, just let those ideas come. For us, we'll have, for Dave and I especially, we'll just have a story meeting and we'll just keep throwing ideas out there, throw them out. When I'm doing beats for Johnny, that's a little more of an isolated practice. After I get the beats out to him, then we have those conversations. But right now, I'm outlining Annihilation, which is the fourth book in the Invasion series, and it's just tons of ideas. They're just getting piled. And then yesterday I started having to throw them all away because, we're going in a different direction for the story. And that's okay. I can't be afraid that I'm going to lose those ideas because the best ones, they'll be back for the next book. If they belong in the series, they'll come back later. I can't take the time to make sure that I'm not going to lose anything, because that is kind of a scarcity mentality. Have faith in yourself as a creator that those best ideas will be there. So I think of the creation process, or the pre-writing process, as two distinct parts: idea acquisition, and then kind of scrubbing those ideas. For idea cleaning, I guess, or idea reduction. So when you're acquiring ideas, there is no bad idea. Always start with yes. Just keep piling them on, piling them on, piling them on. If you are in a collaborative situation like Dave and I, where we have these, long story meetings, and we're just throwing stuff out there to see what sounds good or what works, that's great. If you're all by yourself, just keep throwing the ideas out there and see where they go, because a lot of times, even if an idea doesn't work, it will lead to something that does. And it's about constantly asking yourself questions so that you are backing yourself into the answers. And then once you have that big giant pile of ideas, then you have to figure out what works, and you have to put them in some kind of an order. Throw away the stuff that doesn't work, and of course new ideas will come to fill the place, and then just keep reducing it until you have, okay, well, these are now, I've gone from 93 random ideas to 17 that are really good and have a logical order, and now I can start my story.
So when you start looking at, the core of beats, the pre-production packages that we advocate and that we would tell people about, is the plot architecture, and it used to be the only thing that was in the beats, at least. And again, I'm speaking about the packages that were exchanged between Sean and I. I don't know what's going on at CI. I think there's dark mass involved, black churches, and all sorts of rituals.
Burning effigies for sure.
Burning effigies of the people who have made the list, getting on barges and various aircraft. So there's that. But it used to just be plot. It used to be like chapter 1. So Unicorn Western, the very first book that Sean and I wrote together, it was basically 12 paragraphs. That was it. That was beats. And today, that is one part of it. And honestly, I hadn't thought about this before. It's actually the part that matters the least to me. Like, I want to see where the plot is supposed to go, but it changes so much as I write that I want to know the characters more. Like, I read the characters first. I want to know who those people are. I want to really steep in that, and there's a lot of sort of plot things in there. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but the point is, that's sort of, if you want something out of beats, usually the first thing people want is what do you want to happen in the story? What is it that's supposed to occur? And that's plot. And I think we would make a distinction here between, like you say, well, do we want a character-based story or a plot-based story? And I think that we've all read plot-based stories that feel very heavy-handed on plot and maybe have cardboard
or hollow.
characters.
They just feel hollow.
You just don't care. Like
they're like a paint by numbers thing instead of an actual painting.
This is going to sound okay. I'm not going to name the book, even though I don't think anybody would hate me for saying it. But I know I read a very page-turny book, and it was very popular, and it was good, and I was curious as to what happened. But when I reached I didn't care at all what happened with the characters. I just did not give a shit what happened to these people. And I think we've read character books like that, and I think that you can find a nice middle ground where you're doing both. You have characters that people care about, and the characters influence the plot, and the plot influences the characters. So how would you guys approach plot and character as where those intersections are?
I think with me the characters usually come first, but the plot to me is whatever predicament the character finds themselves in. Like with Available Darkness, it starts with our main guy. He wakes up with no idea who he is. The only thing that we know as readers is that he was buried alive. He has no clue why, and that basically that starts the story, is him trying to find out why he was buried alive. And as the story progresses, he then runs into some people, and in trying to help somebody, he accidentally kills them simply by touching them. So then we find something else out, that this guy has something going on where his touch kills people. And you can trace that back to my OCD, definitely.
I think
But-
what you want. Oh, I'm sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think what you want with a well-written, well-structured plot is that each part of the story logically leads into the next. And you can't. You can diagram that ahead of time, but that doesn't mean that it's going to actually happen the way you want it to happen once you get into the meat and potatoes of your story, because your characters may disagree with what your outline says, and if you've designed actual characters that have histories and feel fleshed out like real people, and you're putting these people in situations together, they're going to behave like people do in real life. And that doesn't mean that they're just going to do what you wanted them to do. They're going to interact. And if they interact, then that means, you're going to have to kind of listen to what they're saying together, because it's possible they're going to rub up against where you want them to go, and you need them to go in a very specific way. So,
by the way, on that note, our children in jeopardy in our books have gotten together and signed a petition asking that they can be put in another genre written by somebody else. Maybe like a
middle grade fiction or something.
Yes, something where their lives are not in constant jeopardy.
Yeah. So I think that you really want to you really want to follow. Of course, you need a plot. Of course, it needs to be smart. Of course, you want to keep readers turning the pages, and plot really helps with that. But to me, it's the characters that give that plot a true foundation, and make it have weight. And if you're just doing paint by numbers plot, then you're going to have disposable entertainment. And while that's good, and some people, that's all they're really looking for, I think the authors who are truly building careers are doing more than that, and you should always try to do more than that.
So I think that a good way to look at plot is just, and we go into this way more in the Story Shop podcast, is you want to look at what does a person want, what is the major obstacle that they need to overcome, and how does overcoming that obstacle change them. And I think that when we're looking at plot, it's not a clumsy, I need this person to do this, so I'm going to shoehorn them in. It's really more of, where is this person now, and what obstacles stand in their way, and how do they surmount them? So, if somebody has a victory, then they typically throw something else in their way, and they're going to grow through each of those. One of the other points that I made about plot in the Story Shop podcast was that you want to make sure that your plot is, if you have multiple storylines, at some point that has to become coherent and harmonious, rather than just, because in serials you can have parallel plots, but it's much less in books that you can keep those totally separate. And in serials, eventually you typically want to get them together too. So in other words, if you have two people over here and you have two people over here, and those are both interesting storylines, the question isn't just where do they intersect if they do, but what is the bearing of one on the other? What is what's similar about these two? Like,
it's
why
the
are they
why.
going
You
on?
always, as a good artist, you always want to pay attention to the why, because otherwise your book could be heavy-handed. It could be thin. Your characters could be cardboard, because if you're not answering that why to yourself, and I think that we always try very hard to answer those whys. We do a lot of backstory stuff that may not ever make the book. It's there so we know, because the more we know, the more real it's going to feel to the reader, even if it's just on a subconscious level. And like Johnny said, you do have to get those disparate storylines in one place, and even within serials. So I'll use two examples here: Yesterday's Gone season 3, and The Beam season 3. For both of those series, the first 2 seasons, you had different sets of characters doing their own thing, but the story gets very spread out that way. And so all of season 3 on Yesterday's Gone, we worked very hard to get all of those characters in the same place at the same time at the end of that season, so that we could give resolution and neaten up the story, which had gotten a little bit messy. Exact same thing with The Beam. two seasons and a lot of different characters in a lot of different places, and there's a lot of hinting as to how everyone and everything is related. But by the end of season 3, we want those characters in this, not just in the same place at the same time, but we want it to make sense. Because it can't just be us deciding they have to be in the same place at the same time and putting them there. We have to do a logical chain of events so that each character follows that chain and ends up where we want them ideally to be. And if one of our characters can't logically follow that progression, then they need to be outside the story, and we need to find a reason for them to be outside the story, rather than just shoving them in with everybody else. Because something that's unbelievable, that strikes a dissonant chord with the reader, that's just the last thing you want. And that's, no plot is worse than bad plot. No other way around.
Yeah. So, and this honestly, like when you're talking about plot, when you're talking about character, a lot of this is the R word, research. So we've had some amusing shows here about research, and we actually did a whole show with Joanna Penn in the SBP Classics about research. And I think that research gets a bad rap, and honestly, if you listen to the jokes about Unicorn Western and stuff, that's how that was born. You'd think that Sean and I don't like research. But I think that research done properly can actually be really, really fun, and it can also be a trap where you get mired in it too far. So I guess we need to, like, what is the role, the appropriate amount of research to give your story some veracity without being just a rabbit hole?
I think it depends on genre. If you're writing a historical romance or something, you need to get the information to make it feel authentic. And if you're writing something else, then there's other sorts of research. Basically, you want the story to feel authentic to whoever's reading it, the world to feel real. So you need to know enough to deliver that. But it is very easy to go overboard.
I think it's not just genre. I think it's tone too. So I'm going to use Tom Clancy. I know I've used him before, but Tom Clancy writes a very specific type of book, right? And his tone is very informational. Like, what the serial number on.
I feel like I'm reading an instruction manual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
right.
like that.
So that's too much. And even with westerns, like, you have different styles of westerns where some are very sparse and it's very lean language and there's just not much there. Some, the setting is a really big part and there is a lot of research there. I think that I personally think you want to do enough research to be able to write comfortably and to be able to write fast and to really know your world. But I do think you can go overboard, and just because it's interesting to you doesn't mean it's interesting to the reader. So I think one way around that is, just like we were talking about ideas earlier, where you can't be afraid of having too many ideas, but you also can't be afraid of throwing them away. Go ahead and write anything that you think is interesting in that first draft, because you do want to get it fast. You want to get that rough draft out so it's out of you. But then when you're actually engaged in the editing process, be merciless. If it isn't necessary to the story, get rid of it. Right now we're writing a zombie story called Dead City, and there's a lot of extra information in there right now, because we're kind of having to explain it to ourselves a little bit. This is the way the disease works, this is the way the drug works, and some of that needs to be figured out while we're writing, but it won't all stay. And that's okay. Some of that is our research. Our research isn't just stuff that we're finding out, or Johnny got on the phone with a biologist friend of his, that was his research, and getting some of that, to make it feel authentic. And a lot of that is getting into the rough draft. But the rough draft is for us. The final draft is for the reader, and we can't have extraneous information in there.
Ultimately, I think that good stories are driven by good characters. Like I said, you can definitely write a thriller where X needs to happen for Y needs to happen for Z needs to happen, and the characters don't matter. But personally, I don't dig that kind of fiction, and I think that most fiction benefits from having better characters anyway, because then the stakes mean something. It isn't just like, well, they could die. Well, I don't care because I don't care about this person. So let's talk a little bit about creating memorable characters and how to flesh them out. One of the things that we do at Realm and Sands, again, I don't know if you guys do it, is we actually cast characters. Sean will give me an extensive biography for a character, a very little of which will actually ever make it into the draft as mentions, and we'll pick a specific actor or actress who might play that person in a movie, selecting them within a movie too. It's like it's not just character X or actor X. It's them in a specific role in a movie, because then we have a common frame of reference so that we understand what type of person that is.
Yeah, because it's certain body language and it's shorthand. I think that is especially helpful because we're collaborating, and so it gives us the same exact frame of reference to work from. But I think that even if you're writing on your own, it gives you a frame of reference to work from. And of course, you're not going to write the character exactly like that person, but it's going to give you a great starting off point. And between casting the character and giving the character a history, you're automatically going to have more fleshed out characters. And I think this is the same thing as the ideas or the research. Get to know your characters, write a lot of dialogue, and then trim it back to just what's necessary. I've loved the exercise lately of converting our stuff to screenplays. So right now I'm working on Crash. I'm turning Crash into a screenplay, and there are long sections of dialogue where it just goes on a little too long, right? Because it's a book. So a book, and it doesn't go on super long. The book's not even that long. But book dialogue is different than movie dialogue. In a movie dialogue, you can't have someone talking for 2 minutes straight. Like, that's a really shitty movie. So instead, you have, you pick what is most important for them to say, and that's been a really fun process, because I'll take 4 paragraphs of dialogue and turn it into a phrase that is then you got to volley back and forth. And I think that's really neat, because you can give people a lot of things to say and really get to know them, and then pare it back down to nothing.
All right, so there's a lot of tricks with character. We won't go into all of them here. There's a lot of things. Sean asks a lot of questions. Has a standard sheet of questions that are like things that you wouldn't necessarily show up, but that help you give flavor to them. So, for instance, I always see most significant memory. First memory is one of the things that always seems to make it in there. The first memory that stood out for this character was X, and I have used that. I think there was a time I used it, but it's rare. But it helps to tell me who they are. One of the things that this is very, very true.
That's one of my favorite questions to answer, actually, to put in there.
And I've used them a few times, yeah. One of the things that happens a lot with Dead City, is happening with Dead City, which is a zombie book, is the setting kind of becomes a character in itself. So another thing that has been making it into these extensive beats packages is setting. Sean actually location scouts, and will have photos or descriptions of various locations, so that we you have this strong. So like in Breaking Bad, Albuquerque is almost like a character. In sci-fi movies, the setting is very much a character as well. The Beam
Sopranos,
is like
New Jersey. Yeah. Like, New Jersey is definitely a character.
So, what are some tricks here for knowing a great setting?
Well, you want your setting to feel lived in. I think finding pictures is great, because bad writing is finding a bunch of pictures and then describing each picture in minutia. That's totally not the point. The point is to get a lot of pictures so that you feel like you've gone on vacation here, you've lived here, it's like what we were talking about with research. You want to research enough so that you can comfortably write about the subject with some amount of authority. And I think location is the same way. If you're just making up location as you go along, it's going to be a lot harder to make that location believable to your reader, because it's not going to be substantial. It's going to feel empty. But if you spend a lot of time really looking at a location, you're going to know what it looks like, and it's going to be reflective in your story and the quality of your copy.
Remember, guys, the idea of this, the title of this podcast is how to write better stories faster. And the way you write better stories faster is by being more prepared. The better you know your setting, the less you have to stop and sort of make up as you go. Like, there are little incidental things that will flow into your prose as you write that you don't have to stop and think about because you've done some of this location scouting or character work. I'll just use Dead City again because it's what I'm currently working on. But there's a company, very large company that moved basically into the middle of nowhere in North Carolina into a small city, and a city grew around the company in the way that cities grew around Dell or other large companies.
Yeah, Dell is actually the model here.
Dell is the model, and so if you know that, then you know that the people who are using that company, that work there, that are coming, in some capacity, are going to be a certain type of person, and certain types of businesses are going to build out. You're going to know that it's a new city in this case. So knowing those background things will help you blaze through the draft, relative, of course, to your usual speed if you're getting hung up. And then, so how do you put it all together? How do you? Because I don't do this part. You two do it, and I don't know where this comes, but the actual building an outline or how to take the character and the setting and the little plot bullet points and stuff and bring it into something that'll get you started.
You want to go first, Dave?
Typically, I don't do it in the most of organized ways, but I usually have everything in my Scrivener document, and usually I'm writing the first draft of the stuff we're doing. So I'm writing the beats and the first draft, so that there isn't the translation that's happening between you and Sean. So it's a little bit different, and I usually know the character. It's not Sean creating these characters for me, or starting them or whatever. I pretty much know them. Even we do come up with stuff together in brainstorming sessions, but I'm the one writing it all down and delivering it to myself, so to speak. So I don't think there's as much a translation process going on.
Yeah, it's not a package that has to be delivered in the same way. For me, when I'm doing those...
For you as a collaborator or somebody working individually, what would this be?
Well, it's hard because every project is different, for sure. They used to be a lot easier, back in the Unicorn Western days when it was just 12 paragraphs and then, here are the beats. Now, it depends. Like, sometimes it's a matter of getting everything in one place, and I collect characters and settings and all of that before I even have a plot. Sometimes it comes plot first, and then the characters get filled in later. But normally, I'd say the most common way I do it is it's just a mashup. I'm just collecting stuff. Oh, this will work for the plot. Oh, I want this character. And the first week or so of developing beats for any given story will just be about acquisition. Like we keep saying, just gather the ideas. Don't be afraid of too many. So I'll stuff this character here and this idea here, and then it's a matter of getting them in order and saying, okay, well, now I have all these ideas. Let me try to get the story in order. And it really depends on the story. So for Invasion was very simple story. We had kind of a high concept overall, but the actual story, this has to happen, this has to happen, this has to happen. It was very neat. And then we have things like the Ruby Room or the Beam Season 3, Beam Season 3 those were hard beats. And so much had to happen, and so much had to happen not just with the beats, but within the story. So I have to find that sweet spot where, okay, here's the skeleton that Johnny can follow, and leaves a lot of room to find itself without losing itself. But there's enough there. So I don't know if that's a horrible answer to that question or not.
Well, it's a very complicated thing, which is why we created a 9-part course. So one podcast is not enough to shoehorn in how to write better stories faster. But again, remember, it's about preparation. And if you're into this, definitely check out the Story Shop podcast, because why not, right? It's going to be hours rather than an hour.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
that's
have
where
9 full episodes of what we just tried to cram into one.
So, but it does make a huge difference. We're systems people, and Sean and I are systems people.
Dave wants to be a systems guy, though. He does. I swear it.
But the better we are prepared and the better we know in advance, we know our characters, we know that stuff, then it's just a matter of saying what they do. So again, it's sterlingandstone.net/FM is the network page, and you can find the Story Shop podcast, which again I would guess will be the first week of September, maybe the second week. Anybody on the audio feed, that should already be up by the time you guys listen. So go check it out, go subscribe, it's free. And enjoy. So this has been the Self Publishing Podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.